My wife cheated with our millionaire neighbor, and now she's claiming half of my $750, $0 inheritance, and the property we built together, all while secretly draining our joint accounts. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be nothing but a lying, cheating bitch. But here I am, and yeah, it's a long story, so buckle up. It all started about 6 months ago when I noticed little things. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining it, her being more distant, secretive about her phone, brushing off my questions like I was some kind of paranoid lunatic. But then, small things started adding up and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Lisa has always been the type to dress up nice, keep her nails done, and act like she's got the world wrapped around her finger. She's gorgeous, no doubt about that. But lately, she'd come home late, smelling different, like perfume I didn't recognize, or maybe even a different cologne. She'd disappear into the bathroom for long stretches and her phone was glued to her hand. She told me she was working late, or meeting friends, but I knew better, something was off. One night I was lying in bed scrolling through my bank account just to check on things like I always do. I noticed a strange transfer, about $3, $0 gone from our joint account. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was paying a bill or something. But then I saw more transactions, random charges at a jewelry store downtown, a dinner at some fancy restaurant I'd never heard of, and a few payments to a guy named Jake. That name rang a bell. I'd seen Lisa texting him, giggling, but I didn't think much of it yet. Curiosity got the better of me one night. I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know trust is supposed to be there, but I was desperate. I unlocked her phone and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were dozens of messages with Jake talking about secrets, late nights, and how he can't wait to see her again. They had plans to meet. My heart started pounding in my chest. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. So I kept reading. It got worse. There were explicit messages, talk about them having sex, how she loved the thrill of sneaking around. I could feel the blood rush to my head. My wife, my partner of 10 years, was cheating on me with the guy next door, Mr. Millionaire, the one who owns the big estate next to ours, the guy who's always flaunting his wealth and making me feel like I'm nothing compared to him. I felt numb. It was like everything I believed in was crashing down. I never thought Lisa, who used to be so sweet and caring, would turn into this person. I was angry, hurt, and honestly a little embarrassed. How did I miss all the signs? How did she manage to keep this secret from me for so long? And the worst part, she was still lying, still claiming she loved me, still saying I was overreacting when I found her texts. That night, I confronted her. I sat her down at the kitchen table and I showed her the messages. She looked surprised at first, then defensive. "That's nothing," she said with a bitchy smirk. "You're just jealous because I have a little fun. Jake's just a friend, you're overthinking everything." But I wasn't overthinking, I saw the evidence. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I'd seen the transactions, the messages. Her face twisted into this nasty, manipulative sneer. She lied, of course. Said it was all innocent, that Jake was just helping her with some business stuff, that she was only talking to him because he was giving her advice on investments. She spun some story about how I was paranoid, insecure, and how I was ruining everything with my accusations. She even had the nerve to say I was overreacting, like her betrayal was just a silly mistake. But I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't care that I knew. She thought she was untouchable. That moment was a turning point. I felt my world shatter. I'd always thought we had a good life, our house, the jobs, the plans for the future. But now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a manipulator, and a cheat. It was like a switch flipped inside me. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I couldn't keep trusting her, not after what I'd seen. I was furious and broken all at once. I knew I had to do something, but I had no idea what exactly that was yet. All I knew was, this was just the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I couldn't just sweep this under the rug or pretend it was a one-time mistake. Lisa's lies kept piling up, and her attitude, it got even worse. She started acting like I was the one invading her privacy, like I was some crazy husband ruining her fun. She dismissed my concerns with that snarky tone she always used when she thought she was smarter than everyone else. "You're just jealous, Jason. You think I'm cheating because you're insecure. Honestly, I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of it. It's just sex, after all." That was the moment I realized she thought she could get away with everything. She thought I wouldn't find out, that I'd just accept her excuses and move on. But I wasn't about to let her do that. Not anymore. I sat her down. Again, this time more serious, and told her I knew about Jake, about the money she'd been siphoning from our joint accounts and how she was lying through her teeth. Her eyes flashed with anger and she spat back. "You don't have any proof. You're just paranoid. You don't understand how the world works, Jason. I can do whatever I want." That's when it hit me. She was completely convinced she was untouchable. She thought her charm, her lies, her money, hell, her affair, gave her the upper hand. Well, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I needed to get some real evidence. I started secretly recording her conversations, checking the bank accounts more frequently, and even hearing a private investigator. I wanted to catch her in the act if I could. I knew I was risking everything, my marriage, my peace of mind, but I couldn't just sit there and accept this betrayal. Over the next few weeks, things got crazier. Lisa kept lying, but her behavior changed. She was more aggressive, more dismissive, and she started spending even more time at the neighbor's estate. I'd see her sneaking out late at night, her phone glued to her ear, giggling at Jake's jokes. I found out she'd even taken some of our savings, about $50, $0, and transferred it into some mysterious account she refused to tell me about. That's when I knew she was trying to drain us dry. One day, I caught her in a lie I never expected. I followed her after she left the house, and she went straight to the neighbor's property. I parked nearby, hidden behind some bushes, and watched her go inside. Moments later, I saw Jake's car pull up and they disappeared into the house together. That was it. I snapped pictures, recorded everything I could, and then I knew I had enough to confront her again with real proof. The next night, I sat her down with everything I had. The photos, the recordings, the bank statements. Her face drained of color. She tried to deny everything, but it was obvious she knew she'd been caught. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're making this all up. You're just jealous because I don't want to be stuck with a boring guy like you." That was the last straw. I looked her right in the eyes and told her I was done tolerating her lies, her cheating, her manipulations. I told her I was prepared to do whatever it took to protect myself and what was mine. I'd already contacted a lawyer, and I was ready to fight for my inheritance, for the house we built together, and for my dignity. She looked at me with that cold, bitchy smirk, like she thought she still had control. But she didn't. Not anymore. I knew the fight was just beginning, and I was ready to take her down. After I laid everything out on the table, photos, recordings, bank statements, Lisa's reaction was pure venom. She looked at me like I'd just betrayed her, which honestly I guess I had. But her denial was textbook. She spun some story about how I was paranoid, that Jake was just a business acquaintance she was helping out, and that I was overreacting because I didn't understand how the world works. Her voice was dripping with that fake sweetness, but her eyes told a different story. They were cold, calculating, like she thought she still had some kind of leverage. I was furious, but I kept my cool. I told her I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. That I'd gone through her phone, her emails, the bank accounts, everything. That I had enough evidence to ruin her if I wanted. I made it clear I'd be talking to a lawyer and I was going to fight for what's mine. Our house, my inheritance, the savings she tried to drain from us. Her face twisted in anger and she shot back. "You're just trying to control me. You're jealous because I still have a life outside of you. Maybe I should just leave and take everything." That was the moment I realized she was planning to run, to take what she could and leave me holding the bag. But I wasn't going to let her, not without a fight. I told her she was done, that I knew about her affair with Jake, about her draining our accounts, and that I was prepared to take legal action to protect myself and what's rightfully mine. She sneered and said I was overreacting, that I was crazy for even thinking she'd do something like this. But I knew better. I knew her game and I was ready to play it back. That night I started making plans. I contacted a lawyer who specializes in divorce and property cases. I wanted to see what my options were, especially since she was claiming half of my inheritance and the house we built together. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried to disappear or do something even more reckless. I was determined to protect myself, my assets, and my sanity. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, throwing tantrums, accusing me of controlling her and trying to manipulate the situation. She'd yell at me, call me insecure, and swear she'd never cheat, yet her actions told a different story. She was draining our joint accounts faster than I could keep track of, spending money on jewelry, clothes, and who knows what else. I found out she'd even opened a new credit card in my name, which she was using without my knowledge. Every day, I felt like I was slipping further into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One of the most shocking moments came when I found out she'd been secretly talking to Jake about cutting me out of the house. I overheard a snippet of a call where she said, "Once I get my hands on the house, I'll make sure Jason doesn't get a dime. He's just a boring, insecure guy who doesn't understand how to run a marriage." That was it. I knew she was planning to take everything, including the house we built together. I couldn't let that happen. I had to act fast. I started gathering more evidence, screenshots of her texts, receipts, and more recordings of her conversations. I even installed a GPS tracker on her car just to see where she was going. It was a brutal week, trying to stay sane while watching her slip further away from me. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless all at once, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had to be strategic, patient, and ready for whatever she threw at me next. One night she came home late again, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize. She was cocky, smirking, and acting like she'd won some game, but I was already prepared. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal. I told her I was going to fight for my rights and that she'd regret ever crossing me. She laughed, that nasty, bitchy laugh that made my blood boil, and said she'd see me in court. I knew then that this was only the beginning of a long, brutal fight, but I was ready. I had to be. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, digging through more financial records, and planning my next move. I knew Lisa was planning something. She was always one step ahead with her lies and manipulation. She kept acting like she was the victim, whining about how I was trying to control her and ruining her life, all while draining our accounts and planning her escape. But I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. I met with my lawyer, a sharp guy named Greg. We went through the papers, the evidence I had accumulated, and discussed my options. The inheritance, my half of a $750, $0 estate, was clearly in my name, but Lisa was claiming she deserved half of it because we were married. I knew it wouldn't be that simple, especially since she was also trying to claim part of the house we built together. Greg told me I had a solid case if I could prove her infidelity and her financial misconduct. That was my priority, gathering enough proof to show she'd been cheating, draining our accounts, and planning to take everything. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior grew more erratic. She started calling me names, shouting at me about how I was jealous, insecure, and a terrible husband. She even accused me of trying to control her, which was rich, considering she'd been sneaking around behind my back for months. She was convinced she could manipulate her way out of this mess, that she'd somehow spin it so I'd look like the bad guy. But I knew better. I had everything documented now, and I was determined to see this through. One day, I caught her in the act again. I followed her after she left the house, and I saw her meet Jake at a secluded spot near the woods. They were exchanging something, probably more money, more lies. I managed to get photos of them together, her leaning into him, her hand on his chest. I also recorded some of their conversation, where she was talking about getting rid of Jason and taking everything. That was the proof I needed. I couldn't believe how brazen she'd become, thinking she could just cheat, drain our savings, and walk away like nothing happened. That night I sat her down again. I played her the recordings, showed her the photos, and laid out everything I'd uncovered. Her face twisted in anger and panic. She tried to deny it, of course, but the evidence was irrefutable. She looked at me with pure contempt and spat. "You're just jealous because I still want to have a life. "You're insecure, Jason. You're just mad I don't need you anymore." I felt a surge of rage. I told her she was done, that I'd go to court, get a restraining order if I had to, and make sure she didn't take advantage of me or our assets. I also decided to take a hard stance on the house. We built it together, but I had the legal right to claim it since it was in my name. Lisa's claim to half of everything was a bluff. She knew she couldn't just walk away with my inheritance or the house unless I let her. I was prepared to fight for full ownership and to expose her for the lying, cheating, money-draining bitch she was. I told her I'd also be reporting her for financial misconduct and fraud, which could land her in serious legal trouble. Her eyes widened for a moment, then she spun her usual lies about how I was trying to ruin her life. But I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth and I was ready to fight for it. While all this was happening, I kept a close eye on her bank accounts. More suspicious transactions kept popping up. She transferred money into secret accounts, and I suspected she was planning to disappear with everything. I contacted my bank and froze some of her accounts, just to prevent further drain. It was a game of chess now, and I was determined not to be the one checkmated. I realized I'd have to be patient, strategic, and tough because Lisa was nothing if not cunning. The worst part: watching her act like she was the victim, crying about how I don't understand her, and she's just trying to find happiness. Yeah, right. The only happiness she wanted was with Jake and a pile of my money. I was done playing her game. I knew I had to go full legal on her, and I was ready. The coming court battles would be messy, but I'd make damn sure I came out on top. This wasn't just about the house or the inheritance anymore. It was about standing up for myself against a woman who thought she could cheat, lie, and drain everything I worked for and get away with it. Not this time. The legal process moved fast once I handed over all the evidence: photos, recordings, bank statements, everything. Greg filed the paperwork, and suddenly Lisa's world started to crumble. She'd always been the one in control, the one with the pretty words and fake smiles, but now she was panicking. She tried to spin her lies even more, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to control her, and that she deserved half of everything because of the marriage. But her words rang hollow. I had the proof she cheated, drained our accounts, and plotted to take everything I'd worked for. The court date was scheduled within a few weeks. I remember the day I walked into that courtroom feeling a mix of relief and rage. All I wanted was justice. Lisa sat there trying to look innocent, but her eyes betrayed her, full of guilt, desperation, and that bitchy smirk that made me want to punch her. She kept insisting she was the one wrong, that I was just insecure, that her affair was nothing serious. But I had the evidence, and I was ready to lay it all out. When Greg presented everything, Lisa's facade started cracking. The judge listened carefully as we laid out her lies, her financial misconduct, and her affair with Jake. I explained how she'd been draining our joint accounts, transferring money into secret accounts, and planning to leave with the house and my inheritance. Lisa tried to argue, claiming she deserved half because she was married, but the judge wasn't buying it. I could see the wheels turning, and I knew I had the upper hand. The most satisfying moment was when the judge ruled in my favor, awarding me full ownership of the house, the inheritance, and ordering Lisa to pay back all the money she'd drained. She looked furious, screaming about how unfair everything was, how I was ruining her life. But I didn't care. I had everything on my side. I finally felt like I'd taken control back from this manipulative, lying woman. After the court hearing, Lisa's true colors shone through. She refused to accept the verdict gracefully. Instead, she stormed out, cursing and shouting about how she'd ruin me, how she'd get even. I knew she was planning something, but I wasn't going to let her. I'd already taken steps to secure the house, transfer the remaining funds into my account, and change all the passwords. I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally won a battle I didn't even realize I was fighting. The aftermath was brutal. Lisa moved out of the house, but not before trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She hired her own lawyer, claiming I was harassing her, trying to turn the court against me. But the evidence was too strong. The judge saw through her lies. I also had to deal with the emotional toll, feeling betrayed by someone I loved, watching her lie, cheat, drain my savings, and then try to turn everyone against me. I learned a lot through this nightmare, about trust, about how people can hide their true nature behind a pretty face, and about the importance of protecting yourself. I realized I'd been naive, thinking Lisa was the woman I married. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a safety net. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get back what's yours. You have to be willing to expose the lies, the deception, and the betrayal, no matter how painful it is. Now I'm finally starting to rebuild. I've sold the house, paid off what I owed, and started saving again. I've also cut ties with Lisa completely. The trust is gone, but I don't regret fighting for my rights. I hope others in this mess can learn from my story. Trust your instincts, keep records, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because if you don't, someone else will take everything you worked for, and you might never get it back. Looking back now, I realize that the whole ordeal changed me in ways I didn't expect. I used to believe in the idea of forever, in the sanctity of marriage, and in trusting someone I loved with all my heart. But Lisa's betrayal shattered that illusion. It's hard to admit, but I came out of this knowing that sometimes people will lie, cheat, and manipulate right in front of you, thinking they're invincible. And if you're not careful, they'll walk all over you, draining everything you've got and leaving you with nothing but a pile of broken trust and shattered dreams. The worst part wasn't even losing the house or the inheritance. It was the feeling of betrayal, the sense that I'd been blind to who she really was all along. I kept replaying the moments when she lied, the times she looked at me like I was a fool for not seeing her true nature. It's a sinking feeling, knowing someone you loved and trusted was secretly planning your downfall. But I learned that the only way to protect yourself is to stay vigilant, document everything, and never let your guard down. Since the court's decision, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, because honestly, it's been of feelings, anger, sadness, relief, and sometimes even guilt. I've come to accept that I wasn't perfect, but I also refuse to blame myself for her choices. I've learned that some people are just toxic, and that it's okay to walk away from someone who doesn't have your best interests at heart. One thing I want to say to anyone reading this: if you're in a similar situation, trust your instincts. Keep every message, every bank statement, every piece of evidence that can prove your case. Don't be afraid to fight for what's yours, even if it means going through hell. Because at the end of the day, your peace of mind and your dignity are worth more than any relationship built on lies. Now I'm finally able to breathe again. I'm focusing on myself, my future, and rebuilding what I lost. It's not easy, and I won't pretend I'm over it completely, but I'm stronger now. I've learned that sometimes the most painful betrayals teach us the most important lessons about trust, about resilience, and about standing up for ourselves when it matters most. And honestly, I'm glad I fought, because if I hadn't, I might have lost everything, including my sense of self.